Hi everybody. So for my final project, I wanted to do some EDA with Major League Baseball replay review. So I found a data set through Kaggle titled MLB Expanded Replay Reviews from 2014-2019, which takes a look at every replay review in MLB baseball games in those seasons, along with a variety of factors that were included that we'll get into in a little bit. So while this project could go into various different directions, I focused it on three several aspects. Replay review by team, which will focus on replay reviews for a specific team that initiated them the most. Replay review by time, which will kind of focus on the time aspect, which is a variable we'll get to in a little bit. And also replay review by the different types of plays that were included. So as you can see here, we are loading our packages that we need, ggplot and dplyr. Also a color palette that's going to be needed for a chart below. So here's a look at our data. As you can tell, a lot of the variables are character variables, which made our EDA a little bit tougher than initially thought of, but I still feel like we have a sufficient amount of analysis to go off of. So again, here you can see the date, team, who they played, the inning, who initiated the replay, what type of play was involved, the ruling, everything like that. So first part, replay review by team. But before we get into looking at a specific team, we have to go over the ruling column. So in baseball, a play can either be confirmed, overturned, or stands as called. Obviously, overturned is pretty understandable. Confirmed being, the umpires say, hey, yep, the original call, we were right, we're sticking with that call. And stands is pretty much where they reviewed it, and there's not really any indisputable evidence that exists to where they can overturn it, so they remain with what was called on the field. So as you can see here, we have a table with the results. This is a count of every single replay review and what was the ruling. And here is a bar chart displaying those counts. As you can see, there was a lot more overturned calls than there were confirmed or stands. We are not focused on record keeping or rules check for this EDA for this project because those are initiated by umpires, and they aren't really they're not really calls that affect a certain play. They're just kind of checking, umpires checking themselves to make sure that they follow a certain rule. So for this EDA, they are irrelevant. So once we have that, let's go and look at count of each replay review by team. So this bar chart here shows each team and the amount that they amount of replays that they initiated themselves. So as you can see here, TBA, which stands for Tampa Bay Rays, they initiated the most. So we're going to focus on them for the basis of this project because they are just one of 30 MLB teams. So we're going to keep this concise as much as we can. So we're going to filter this data, and we're going to filter it based on the Kevin Cash value of the initiator column. Kevin Cash is the manager of the Tampa Bay Rays, so we want to get a count of all the replay reviews pertaining to the Tampa Bay Rays. We don't want any that are initiated by an umpire involving the Rays. We want strictly the ones initiated by the Tampa Bay Rays themselves. So we filtered it through Kevin Cash. So as you can see here, we have 280 replay reviews total initiated by Kevin Cash of the Tampa Bay Rays. So we would then want to take a look at how many were overturned. As you can see here, we have 127 of them were overturned. After overturned, we have confirmed. We have 77 were confirmed. And then stands, we have 76. And after doing all that, we can put it into a bar plot. And as you can see, just visually a count of each replay review by ruling type for the Tampa Bay Rays. And as you can see, initiating replay review worked out for Tampa Bay in their favor more often than didn't. As you can see, as we saw earlier, there was a lot more calls that were overturned in favor for the Rays than ones that were either confirmed or stands. So initiating replay review more than anybody turned out to work in favor for Tampa Bay. The second part, replay review by time. So our time variable was a character variable, so we had to format it into numeric, and we created a vector called time num, which is doing just that, formatting the time variable as numeric. Once we did that, we did some basic statistics, mean, median, max, min, things like that. So just so people understand kind of how we had to format it in order to have it properly run, as you can see here, the median is 123. That stands for 1 minute and 23 seconds. The max, 8 minutes 34 seconds. Minimum, 15. That would be just 15 seconds. So that's kind of how the format should be run. So we had to get rid of the colon in order to format it properly and run it as a numeric variable. After we did that, we created a histogram, kind of showed the frequency, the count of each replay review by its time, just to see how that kind of dispersed. And then we applied it to the Tampa Bay Rays again. As we saw earlier, we focused on Tampa Bay Rays for ruling, so now we're going to do the same thing with time. So we want to see, does the time have a certain effect on what type of the ruling is? So to do this, we created a data frame called Top 20, which takes the 20 longest replay reviews initiated by the Tampa Bay Rays, and we organize it and we show the count by ruling just to see how many of the 20 belong to each ruling. As you can see here, based on this bar plot, we have 4 were confirmed, 7 were overturned, and 9 stood as called. So based on that alone, we can rightfully conclude that the longer replay goes, the more likely the call will either be overturned or remain as called due to some indisputable evidence not existing. Lastly, we looked at replay review by play type. So obviously in baseball, there's a lot of plays that could be reviewed. As shown by this table here, we have a count of every single play type. And just to visually see this better, we'll put this in a bar plot as well. And as you can see, of all the replay reviews by play type, tag play and force play, we're head and shoulders above the rest. So we're going to focus on just those 2 values moving forward. And we want to see the type of ruling for each play. So we're going to create a new vector that gives us force play and tag play, and then the count of confirmed, overturned, and stands calls for both of those values. And here's a side-by-side bar plot to show kind of how those compared. So as you can see, there were more force plays than tag plays that were overturned, but more tag plays and force plays were either confirmed or stood as called. So now, as we saw earlier, we've been focused on the Tampa Bay Rays in terms of ruling and time. So now we're going to do the same thing for play type. So let's look at how many force plays and tag plays were initiated by the Tampa Bay Rays themselves. As you can see here, we have 103 force plays against 131 tag plays. And again, another bar plot to kind of show the comparison with this vector. So now let's kind of put it all together. So we looked at the number of force and tag plays based on their ruling. Then we looked at how many force and tag plays were initiated by the Rays. So now we're going to take a look at how many force and tag plays initiated by the Tampa Bay Rays were either overturned, confirmed, or remained as called. So again, we're going to create a new vector. Once we do that and filter it with everything we want to include, you can see here's the table of our results. And again, we have another bar plot that shows how many force and tag plays were overturned for the Tampa Bay Rays, how many were confirmed, and how many stood as called. So, this data set didn't have a ton of, wiggle room, I guess, to be able to explore maybe how certain replay reviews, correlate to winning or losing a game. Obviously, there's never going to be a direct relationship that comes out of that. It's in terms of a replay specifically has an effect on a team winning or losing a game, but it can affect a call. So it was interesting to run multiple analyses and different types of EDA to kind of show the relationship between replay review affecting a certain team, affecting a certain call, a certain ruling. So it was definitely quite interesting. So I hope you enjoyed viewing this project.